Max Verstappen's future isn't being decided by headlines. It's being decided by one brutal number: 109 championship points, leaving him only 6th after Hungary and placing his Red Bull exit clause firmly within reach. And while everyone focused on podium celebrations, something far more dangerous happened behind closed doors. Toto Wolff stopped denying the possibility. Suddenly, Formula One's biggest transfer bombshell no longer feels like a rumour. It feels like a countdown. For nearly a decade, Red Bull and Max Verstappen looked inseparable. 4 world championships created the image of the perfect empire. But Formula One has never rewarded loyalty over performance. The 2026 regulation reset has completely reshuffled the competitive order. Mercedes now lead both championships with teenage sensation Kimi Antonelli. Ferrari have emerged as genuine challengers, while Red Bull find themselves chasing instead of dictating. The balance of power has quietly shifted. But there's a catch. Publicly, Toto Wolff insists stability comes first. Privately, he refuses to close the door on Verstappen. At the same time, Red Bull are reportedly offering a richer contract until 2029, only if Max agrees to remove the very exit clauses giving him leverage today. So ask yourself this: if both teams suddenly seem so eager, what exactly do they know that the rest of the paddock doesn't? Before we move on, make sure to smash that like button and hit subscribe so you never miss out on any of our latest videos. The evidence behind this Mercedes, Red Bull and Verstappen saga becomes even more unbelievable once you connect the technical failures, the contract clauses and one revealing statement from Toto Wolff. The biggest mistake fans are making is assuming this story is about driver loyalty. It isn't. It's about competitive leverage, and Formula One has always rewarded leverage far more than emotion. Look at the numbers after the Hungarian Grand Prix. Kimi Antonelli leads the championship with 219 points. Lewis Hamilton sits second on 169. George Russell is third with 160, while Max Verstappen has only 109 points in 6th place. That isn't simply an off-season. It's a complete collapse compared to the standards Verstappen himself established over the previous 4 years. Now combine that with the most important technical detail in his contract. Verstappen's agreement with Red Bull reportedly contains a performance-based exit clause. And because he entered the summer break outside the required championship position, that clause has effectively become active until October. That changes everything. Suddenly, Red Bull are no longer negotiating from strength. They're negotiating from fear, and fear creates mistakes. Notice the timing. Within weeks of those exit clauses becoming relevant, reports emerged that Red Bull are prepared to extend Verstappen's deal until 2029, increase his salary beyond the current €65 million per year, and, most importantly, remove the release clause entirely. Forget the salary. The real battle isn't about money. It's about control. If Red Bull eliminate the exit clause, Verstappen loses his biggest negotiating weapon. If Verstappen refuses, Red Bull continue every race weekend knowing their greatest asset could legally walk away before the next major regulation cycle even settles. That is not contract management. That's political warfare. Now compare Red Bull's behaviour with Mercedes. Toto Wolff could have shut the rumours down in 10 seconds. Instead, he did something much more interesting. He acknowledged that Verstappen and Antonelli could race together one day. Even more revealing was the comparison he chose. Rather than talking about driver hierarchy, Wolff immediately referenced Hamilton versus Rosberg, arguably Mercedes' most explosive internal rivalry. He even joked that he'd probably manage that situation better today. Most people heard confidence. Team principals heard preparation. Because experienced bosses rarely volunteer examples unless they've already imagined the scenario internally. Then came another revealing sentence. Wolff insisted Mercedes shouldn't change drivers because the priority is making the car more stable. That sounds ordinary. It isn't. Mercedes currently lead both championships despite suffering repeated reliability issues throughout 2026. In other words, they believe their weakness is mechanical, not human. Their engineering department still sees unused performance inside the package. Think about what that means. Mercedes aren't searching for a driver to rescue the project. They're building a project attractive enough that the best driver on the grid might eventually choose it. That's a completely different philosophy. Red Bull, meanwhile, appear trapped in the opposite cycle. Listen carefully to Verstappen's own words after qualifying in Hungary. Qualifying was absolutely rubbish. The car was completely broken. Every lap was worse and worse. Those aren't emotional exaggerations. They're technical clues. When a driver says every lap deteriorates instead of improving, engineers immediately start looking at variables that should remain consistent: tyre preparation, aerodynamic balance, rear ride height stability, brake temperature windows, or even unpredictable platform movement through high-speed corners. Something fundamental wasn't behaving predictably, and unpredictability is the one thing elite drivers hate most. Notice another small but revealing detail. Following qualifying, Red Bull reportedly kept Verstappen's media appearances incredibly short. Officially, the explanation was scheduling. Unofficially, the Dutch media described Verstappen as being beyond despair after yet another weekend involving unexplained performance problems. That phrase matters. Not frustrated, not disappointed, beyond despair. Those are words normally reserved for drivers who no longer believe the underlying issue is temporary. That's the psychological crack every rival team watches for. Because Formula One transfers rarely begin with contract negotiations. They begin the moment absolute confidence disappears. And for the first time in years, that confidence appears to be slipping inside the Red Bull garage. Now, let's examine the detail almost everyone overlooked. Red Bull insist Verstappen remains committed to the project. His manager, Raymond Vermeulen, publicly repeated that they have always been loyal and that Max wants to finish his career with the team. That's a powerful statement, but notice what comes immediately after it. With the opportunity to win. Those 5 words completely change the meaning. That isn't unconditional loyalty, it's conditional loyalty. Win, and the relationship continues. Stop winning, and every clause, every meeting and every phone call suddenly becomes significant. That's precisely why Red Bull's latest technical upgrades deserve a closer look. Since introducing the revised side pods and engine cowling package in Austria, Verstappen has stood on the podium twice in 3 races. On paper, that sounds like progress. But Formula One engineers don't judge upgrades by podiums. They judge them by the performance ceiling. Ask a simple question. Did Red Bull become faster? Or did Verstappen simply maximize a car that still isn't capable of consistently beating Mercedes and Ferrari? Those are completely different realities. The evidence points toward the second answer. Across recent weekends, the RB22 has shown flashes of pace, only to lose consistency through qualifying or long-run tyre management. One session, the front axle responds perfectly. The next, the rear platform becomes unpredictable. Drivers can adapt to understeer. They can adapt to oversteer. What they cannot adapt to is a balance that changes corner after corner. That destroys confidence. And confidence is the hidden currency of Formula One. Now compare that philosophy with Mercedes. Despite leading both championships, Toto Wolff openly admits the W17 still suffers reliability concerns. That's a remarkable admission because most championship-leading teams protect their weaknesses. Mercedes did the opposite. Why? Because reliability is measurable. A failed hydraulic system can be redesigned. An electrical issue can be traced. Cooling inefficiencies can be solved. Those are engineering problems. Red Bull's issue appears far more dangerous. They're still searching for the reason why the car behaves differently from one session to another. One problem has a blueprint, the other becomes a guessing game. That's why Verstappen's comments after Hungary should worry Red Bull far more than any rumour linking him with Mercedes. Drivers don't leave because a rival offers a larger salary. Elite drivers leave when they stop trusting the engineering direction, and trust is built through predictable performance. Look carefully at Toto Wolff's wording once again. He didn't say Mercedes needed Verstappen. He simply admitted he wasn't afraid of pairing him with Antonelli. That's an enormous difference. In negotiation psychology, removing fear immediately shifts leverage. It's almost an invitation, a message saying, if you become available, we'll cope. Now place yourself inside Red Bull headquarters. You already know your driver's exit clause is active. You know Mercedes are leading both championships. You know Ferrari have Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc extracting consistent results. And now, your biggest rival publicly confirms that managing Verstappen alongside the championship leader wouldn't intimidate them. Pressure doesn't just increase, it multiplies. Then, there are the reports of senior Red Bull figures, including Laurent Mekies and Oliver Mintzlaff, working on a complete restructuring of Verstappen's agreement, while frustration reportedly grows within the company's leadership over how long this saga has dragged on. That tells us something crucial. This is no longer merely Max Verstappen's contract. It's become a boardroom issue. When senior executives become directly involved, the conversation usually extends far beyond driver salaries. It touches commercial strategy, sponsorship confidence, future engine projects, and even the team's ability to retain key technical personnel under the new regulations. One driver, one clause. Yet the consequences ripple through the entire organisation. If Max Verstappen does activate his exit clause, who actually benefits the most? At first glance, the obvious answer is Mercedes, but that's only half the story. The real winner is whichever team forces everyone else to react, because Formula One has always been a game of dominoes. One elite driver doesn't simply change one garage, he changes the market for every garage. Imagine Mercedes pairing the most complete driver of his generation with the fastest rising talent in Formula One. On one side, Verstappen brings unmatched race management, tyre preservation, and an almost supernatural ability to extract lap time from an imperfect car. On the other, Antonelli represents the future, raw speed, fearless overtaking, and a driver already leading the championship at just 19 years old. Experience meets momentum. That's a terrifying combination, and Toto Wolff knows it. Remember, this is the same team principal who survived the Hamilton-Rosberg Civil War. He understands that two number one drivers can create internal friction, but he also knows they can push an organisation to unprecedented heights, provided the car is capable of winning. That's why his comments weren't accidental. They were calculated. Meanwhile, Red Bull face an even deeper problem than replacing Verstappen. Who replaces belief? A Formula One team isn't built only around aerodynamic maps and CFD simulations. It's built around confidence. Engineers work differently when they know the driver can compensate for a difficult balance. Strategists become more aggressive. Pit crews perform with greater certainty. Sponsors invest because success appears inevitable. Remove that centerpiece and the entire ecosystem changes. That's why this saga extends far beyond a single signature on a contract. Now consider another political layer. Mercedes don't actually need to rush. George Russell remains one of the strongest qualifiers on the grid, while Antonelli is proving he can lead a championship campaign. Every race Verstappen spends, becoming more frustrated at Red Bull, quietly strengthens Mercedes' negotiating position. Time is working for Wolff, not against him. Red Bull, however, are racing a different clock. October. That's the reported window in which Verstappen can decide whether to activate his performance clause. Every disappointing weekend before then increases uncertainty. Every unexplained handling issue strengthens the argument that the problem isn't temporary, but structural. So here's the question nobody inside the paddock can answer yet. Is Toto Wolff simply playing psychological chess with Red Bull, or has Mercedes already positioned itself for Formula One's biggest driver signing of the new regulation era? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, because this Verstappen saga is only getting more explosive with every race weekend.